I've been working with wood most of my life. My father had a little shop in the basement, and as a kid you puttied with it. But my education is environmental science and biology. I went to Brock University in Sir Sanford Fleming. But during the recession in the 90s, I found I was not getting as much work as I wanted, so I started into building some small pine furniture and cabinets and things of that sort. Trying to sell them in the craft show market, and it didn't work out really well. It was a tough market, so then I started getting into custom furniture. And from custom furniture, I started adding a little bit of carving, and then carving became the main part of my business after a little while. So now I market myself as a carver, but I still do a little bit of everything. I do furniture and cabinets and mantles and boxes and whatever comes down the pike, really. Wood carving is a creative outlet. It's an enjoyable activity. Sometimes it's just a lot of hard work. I think that what you get out of it is the satisfaction when you're finished, and that's with the boats and other things as well. I think sometimes people don't realize how much work goes into a very simple carving sometimes, and you can spend hours and hours taking little chips of wood off to get to the final product. And the taking of the little tiny chips really isn't all that exciting. It's the spending the time to do it. And actually that's something that I came across. I took a drawing class from a woman, Pauline Bradshaw. She's an extremely good classical realist, and she happened to move into Lindsay, and so I drive up there for a couple of drawing classes, I thought, to help my carving along. And just watching her, and like, she will spend, endless hours doing a pencil drawing, but the finished product is just stunning. And it sort of occurred to me when I was taking those classes that it's all those tiny little marks that you make that in any art form. If you look at a blacksmith, it's 1,000 times he hammers a piece of wood, metal, or the artist, the little pencil sketches. So it's the same with the wood carving. You have to have the patience to go through and make the hundreds of little tiny cuts to get to the end product, which is very satisfying. So I think the satisfaction that comes out of the end product is probably what I get out of it. And doing something that's unique and interesting. Now, I can't say that there's any one person that specifically headed me towards wood carving or woodwork in general. I've always been handy. I like building things. I've always been creative that way. When my environmental type career wasn't going where I had expected, I kind of looked into a lot of different things that I could do. I looked into metalwork and blacksmithing and woodworking, and I looked at even engraving gravestones. I went and talked to a fellow who was doing that, and it's something that was more hands-on. The first good size commission that I got was a couple by the name of Denner. They own a bus company up in Lindsay, and they happen to live about a block away from us, and I'm not entirely sure how we ended up crossing paths, but they had asked me to build them a entertainment unit for their living room, and they have quite a large old house, and it was quite a challenging piece of furniture, especially because it was about half the size of my shop. It was large pine. They wanted kind of a pickled finish on it. But that was probably the first time that I added any real significant carving to anything. And I put in the curved part at the top, I put in a plaque with some roses and some vines, and that was probably the first really good commission that I got that sort of really said, well, yeah, maybe you can do this. And from them, I did quite a bit of work for them over the years when I was up there. So it turned out good. The biggest challenge that we've run into over the years is the marketing. And it's trying to get people to know what it is that I do. I'm a generalist, which people aren't used to anymore. They're used to people that build a chair, or they build a table, or they, whatever they do one thing, and then they can pigeonhole and say, well, if I want a table, I'll go to the table guys. So I find that if I build someone a table, they will think I build tables. They won't think of me when it comes time to build a chair or a desk or a box. But on the other hand, if I build a box for someone, they won't think of me for a table. So it's very difficult, we found, to market yourself in terms of a generalist and saying, I do woodwork. If I can build you a chair, I can build you something else. And it's very difficult to get that across to people. We found in shows that people will come into our booth and they'll say, I might have 20 things down. They'll say, well, did you build that? And I'll say yes. And then, did you build this? Yes. And they'll open up the book and they'll go through and they'll say, well, did you build that? And I'll say yes. So people, I don't think, because of the way things are bought and sold today, they're not used to somebody being able to build a lot of different things. So that seems to be the biggest problem, just getting across the fact that I'm a generalist and I can build you pretty much anything as long as it's made of wood. When I was doing the craft show circuit, I was doing a lot of pine furniture, and then I started doing a little bit of custom furniture. And one time when I would go on to Peterborough to buy wood at Monaghan Lumber, there was a set of 6 carving chisels on the shelf for sale half price. And that kind of piqued my interest. I thought, well, what the heck, let's buy them. So I bought them and I played around with them, and I did a lot of carving. Just I bought some books. I bought some books on traditional carving. I tried to read as much older material as I could, because I was more interested in the traditional mallet, chisel type carving. I didn't have an interest in using the die grinders and Dremel tools and things like that. I much prefer the quiet of the traditional tools. And I played around with it for a little while and did some carvings, and most of them weren't very nice. Some of them weren't bad, and as I said, I started adding it to furniture a little bit at a time, most often for free, and then eventually people started asking for it. And as I carved and did more things, I decided I needed more tools, and you find one here and find there, and I'd pick them up at yard sales and antique stores, and before long I had a pretty good collection of tools, and after a couple of years of doing it a lot, I started to get fairly good at it. And luckily I had a bit of an artistic eye. The biggest thing with the carving, I find, is to do it. And like people say, well, when I first started, they go, well, you've only been carving 4 or 5 years. How are you able to, get these sort of results? And I go, well, I'm doing it, 20 hours a week, not half an hour, twice a week on the weekend or whatever. So I sort of self-imposed apprenticeship, and I just added carving to everything for free for a while, until I started to get comfortable enough to call myself a woodcarver. And then when I did, I sort of slanted the business towards the woodcarving end. And the one thing woodcarving doesn't do for you is make you rich. So you have to sort of economize where you can and pick up tools where you can. And I often tell my carving students it's better to have 3 really good quality chisels than to have 100 that are cheap and no good for anything. So I try to find things that are good quality and will last me a lifetime. And of course there's always some that you use more than others that are favorites, but my preference, as I was saying, is to do by hand, because I find that quite often, particularly in the furniture repair end of things, that I can quite often do things by hand in less time than it would take me to set up the machinery to do the same operation. Also in the carving end of things, with a traditional carving methods, you can remove a lot of material in a hurry, and you can get a lot done a lot faster than you could do it by the time you set up a machine to do the same thing. Like this is an adze that was made for me by a blacksmith here in town named Mark Pujmarty. It's a beautiful tool and lovely balanced, nice shape to it, and I'll use this for instance for hollowing out the bottom of a chair seat. Among my chisels I have some of these. This is probably my favorite chisel, and it's a pattern maker's chisels that was given to me by a friend's uncle who had them in his basement, and the story I think he said is he got it from an older German gentleman that was a pattern maker. And they're just a really nice tool. It's just nice to work with. This is my favorite here. This old Norris hand plane, and even to see the finger mark from the gentleman who originally owned it, from using it for years and wearing that off. That that I find interesting. And when you pick it up, the tool has history, and it's just a very well made, nice tool. We call it an automata. That's it's actually a new interest of mine, as my interests tend to evolve from the woodwork to the carving to the boats to the chairs to whatever. The carving is always the common thread. And we a couple of times now have done shows for the local museum. They put on a show to try to raise support for the archive and gallery they have, new space they have. And each year there's a theme. And the last one we did, the theme was the fire of 1883 and 84 in Port Perry, which burned the town. And a number of different, craftspeople and artists in the town submit things. So there'll be quilters and blacksmiths and whatever else, painters. And I wanted to try to come up with something that was wood. And given that theme, I read the story on it, and what I'd come up with was this whirligig or automata with a little scene that sort of portrayed what happened during the fire and had to have mechanical movement. So the real interest came to me in trying to figure out how to make each of the individual things move and get the movements I wanted using just wood. And when I started researching it, I found on the internet there's this whole group of people doing these things called automata, and it's really piqued my interest, and I plan to do more in the future. I have ideas for about 30 of them in my head right now. I just have to find the time to get them to the wood. The wood carving classes came about after about 5 years or so of carving, and I'd found that by reading and doing, I'd taught myself to do it probably the hard way, and I figured I could probably save people a lot of time and effort if I gave them some shortcuts on how to get started. And also, as we talked about earlier with the traditional carving, I couldn't find anybody that was really doing it. And I found that the methods were much faster than a lot of the die grinder, Dremel tool type carving that was going on. And I kind of thought I had something that I could offer up. So I just started. I had gone to a couple of different carving clubs, and I would help people out occasionally, and I thought, well, let's just try it. And I'd do 2 or 3 people in my shop in the afternoon or whatever. They'd come over and we'd do some carving lessons, and I've been doing it now, probably close to 10 years, and it's just I just really enjoy the teaching part of it. It's a lot of fun, and early on, one of the things about the teaching is it causes you to really look at how and why you do things. So something that I would do automatically, just because that's the way I always done it, I found that now I had to explain why I do that to someone, and it's really helped my carving as well. But it's just one of those things that it's quite enjoyable to teach someone and show them that it's not that difficult, and it's fun and it's safe, and using traditional tools, it's a lot more interesting than grinding away on something and trying to model. I think the students enjoyed it well. I have people that come back time and time again to do the classes, which I do here in my shop now. And, I have 4 to 8 students at any given time, and it's just kind of relaxed and fun, and they learn something, and I learn something, and it's good. I really enjoy it. The really interesting thing I found from teaching carving is that how differently people learn. I'm a visual learner. If I see it, I can pretty much copy it, and I found that some of the students, some people they have to hear you talk about it, they have to read it, they have to see a picture, and they'll do it. Some people you actually almost have to hold their hand and move the chisel. Once you've done that, they've got it. It's surprising how some simple concepts people won't get, like wood grain and things like that, which to me are very fundamental. And some people who've been working with wood all their life may not necessarily understand that. On the other hand, you'll have someone who come in who's never picked up a chisel or a piece of wood in their life, and they'll get it just like that, and they'll go. And those are the people that really surprise me the most. The people that have never touched it, they get it, and they go, and that's great to see. And some people have done some carvings that I was hesitant to think that they'd be able to complete by the end, and they did, and that's good to see. It takes patience though, and to carve well, you have to be a patient person. The courses are held here in my shop in the evenings during the fall and winter usually. Sometimes I run through the summer, but not very often. And they run for 10 weeks, 2 hours a night, once a week. And we'll run one from the fall till Christmas, and then January until the spring. And they're a lot of fun. We enjoy them. Most people start out with a very simple project. They carve a walking stick. We do a barley twist handle on it. They start with just the simplest of tools, just a 1/2 inch or a 5/8 straight chisel. We show them how to sharpen, which is a huge part of carving. About 50% of it is sharpening. If you can't get your tools sharp, you won't enjoy it. So you learn to sharpen, you learn how to hold the chisel, you learn how to fasten things down, you learn basic wood grain and direction, and a simple tool. And then from there, we try to decide what interests them, and if their interests tend towards more of a relief carving or more carving in the round, then I'll direct them that way, and we try to pick out tools that are appropriate for them, and they can buy them as they need them. I always recommend that you don't go out and buy a $400 set of tools when you don't know what it is that you want to do yet. You can sort of get the tools as you need them. The boat building sort of came along as a something I've always wanted to do. And I think anybody that ever works with wood eventually wants to try to build a boat. It's sort of like the ultimate in woodworking craft. And I had seen Adirondack guideboats many years ago, and I've always liked the way they looked. I like the style of them. They're very an elegant boat, and so I thought, if I'm going to build a boat, that's the one I want to try. So I at one point in time decided, well, let's try it. And as I said, I'm always trying to find something new to keep me interested and keep me busy. So I thought, we'll try boats, we'll try Adirondack guideboats. So again, same as the carving, I read everything I could on the subject, and then just tried it. And the first one was a pretty steep learning curve, but like anything, once you've done one or two, it becomes a little more intuitive, and they're a lot of fun. They're kind of a natural extension of the carving, because there's no straight lines. Everything's curved, and that's fun to do. You get tired of building boxes sometimes, so building something that's all curves is fun. It's interesting. I've never been down to the Adirondack Museum, which everyone tells me I should, because it's full of wooden boats and Adirondack boats. But I had seen one years ago when we were out in upstate New York. One time, a guy rowing one across a lake, and it sort of stuck in my mind, and I'd seen photographs of them, and there was just something about them that struck me, and I thought, this is a nice a boat that you just don't see around here. And I thought, I'd like to do something a little different that might pique somebody's interest, because there's already, maybe 100 guys in Ontario building canoes, but I couldn't think of anyone in Ontario building guideboats. So I thought I'd give it a try. One of the reasons that I am a generalist is because I get bored doing the same thing for too long. That's why I like to do a little bit of something here, a little bit of something there. I'll build a chair, work on a boat, piece of furniture, do a bit of carving. I don't think I'd want to do the same thing every day. That's sort of how I've gotten where I am. I do enjoy each of them when I'm doing them. Like if I'm building a chair, I really enjoy the fact that I'm building a chair. But after you've done about 30 or 40 spindles, you're thinking, I'd kind of like to go do something else. And if you're building a boat, that's enjoyable at the time. So I don't think there's anything in particular that I enjoy more than others. The carving obviously is a thread that runs through everything. So if I had to pick, it'd just be carving, I guess.